Greetings, my friends, and welcome back to the Home Slice. We have episode number 4 of our EDC tournament happening today. And today there is a Civivi face-off. There's a few reasons I'm doing this, but I want to do this series on flat grinds versus hollow grinds. And I figure if I'm going to do that justice, it would be good to get a grind of about the same height, with blades of about the same thickness, with the same steel in them, with the same heat treatment because it's from the same maker. And so to isolate most all of the variables and figure out whether I like hollow grind or flat grind better, here in this last round we have the Civivi Imperium. Look at this thing! This knife is so cool. This is gorgeous drop point blade shape. It's got miles of jimping up here. Really thin handle. Love that. And it's got shredded carbon fiber and silver flake in resin for the handles. That's so cool. I think this is a really cool knife personally. It's got a beautiful front flipper here with a lot of purchase on it. It's got a forward choil that you can use if you'd like, and it's got a lot of edge length. I'll come back to show you all of the stats that I really care about and the roster of what has won so far in this tournament in just a second. But before we get to those, we will let the beautiful detents of the Civivi Imperium take it home, and we'll show you the other knife that I'll be carrying in this episode, which is the Civivi Appalachian Drifter 2 in Nitro V, purple G10, carbon fiber bolster. Look at that beauty. I got these Appalachian Drifters on a closeout sale from Blade HQ because they were discontinuing the model, and I figured, hey, $50 and $40 for Nitro V and S35 VN and micarta and carbon fiber G10 bolster is a pretty stinking good deal and a good opportunity to demo a couple of hollow grinds on some steels that I'd like to research and optimize sharpening protocols for. You may be familiar with the Appalachian Drifter from last episode, where this canvas micarta version went up against the slip joint Kershaw Federalist in a face-off. This will be really interesting because this one is fresh in my memory. And so there's a couple of differences that will really become clear to me. Number one, this satiny G10 doesn't feel like it has a lot of grip. So we'll figure out if I like micarta better or G10 better between these two, because I'll carry the exact same knife with each. And I think also this finish, I love how this like sort of oxide or acid wash finish looks, but it will be interesting to see how much better a satin finish works in terms of not creating friction, slipping through things, or lubricity, I suppose you call it, and see if this satin finish blade makes much of a difference. Because one of my main complaints on this one was that the fuller is so squared off and the oxide finish is so powdery that when things hit that, they sort of tend to bind up. So we'll see if that's any different on this model of the Appalachian Drifter 2. Both of these guys settled out in the like 130 grams best range. They've both been sharpened on 400 grit CBN on this side and up to 3000 grit Suhiro Serax Waterstone on this side. They're both dual grit edges and they've both been stropped with Mother's Mag polish on flat denim. So identically prepared edges of identical steel and the same heat treatment protocol. So this will be a really interesting hollow grind versus flat grind test. I guess the final note is sort of deployment, fun, fidgety sort of notes, and that is that there are thumb studs on the Civivi Imperium that work exceptionally well. It's a liner lock construction, executed very well, but fairly thin liner lock. Both of them are fairly thin. You can get the Appalachian Drifter out with like a flipper tab action by wrapping your finger over. You can front flip it. You can reverse flick it. You can use the fuller on the side for a slow open. You can basically thumb stud it with the fuller. So lots of deployment options. It should be really fun to play with. We'll see if that factors into my decision or if all I care about is slicing aggression. The paper slicing action of both of these guys is really, really good. So good. Man, I love a fresh, well-stropped dual grit edge, man. It is just wild how aggressive these things are and just how effortless they make cutting. Oops. I can't, the tip has so much curve to it, it wants to slip out, but anyway, you guys get the idea. So good. I'll do some glamour shots of these guys so you can get a good look at them. Alright, back from 1 week of use each, and what are my thoughts on the Civivi Imperium in carbon fiber shred and sort of an acid wash tumbled finish, and the Civivi Appalachian Drifter Purple G10 carbon fiber bolster clip point in hollow ground satin Nitro V. Both of these blades coming to us in Nitro V. I love both of these knives. This is actually quite a difficult call to make. I think the one thing that I will say is that on the fancier, more polished finishes of handles, I do miss some of that grippiness that you get. So if I could change something on the two of them, it would be probably to give them a little bit more grip, especially when wet. That's not a bother all the time, but I do have a metabolism that runs pretty hot, and so my hands can get a bit sweaty at times given the weather. I really like both of the front flippers on this. I just executed that on my left hand, which is difficult for me to do. I'm not very good with that. They're both rolling on bearings. I really like them. The locks are not the most robust liner locks in the world. I don't think that bothers me for like a sort of light duty EDC to have a thinner liner lock. So what really should decide which one of these wins? Well, I think the theme of the whole series is hollow grind versus flat grind, and I think I have to say that they kept this Imperium thin enough behind the edge that actually I didn't notice a huge cutting advantage in the Appalachian Drifter. And that being the case, I really like having a little bit more blade length that you get in this Imperium versus the blade and edge length in this Appalachian Drifter. It's not a huge difference because they did do a little cutout here, but I find I do prefer a longer, slimmer knife in hand. I don't know, I just look at a knife with kind of generally almost this exact sort of dimension and I'm like, oh yeah, that's my dimension. I like how the belly rolls and you can put it down on a cutting board if you're doing food prep without a super severe angle. I like that the tip is thinned out, but it's robust enough that you don't really worry about it, where with this one, I did worry a little bit. It's quite an acute little tip there, and I do find with a really concave clip point, sometimes where the tip is surprises me. It's not as easy to visually track the tip, and so I did actually snag my hand with this once or twice. But love the look of the purple. Love the look of the carbon fiber shred. They're both a little fancier than I would normally go. Civivi does an excellent job with their sort of micro machining. I'm really impressed with the precision they deliver at the price point. I think overall, they're both small, slim, minimal carry. I liked Nitro V a lot. We'll best test it in a second. I liked the front flipper. I like just about everything about these. They could use a little bit more grip and a little stronger lock, but that's a bit getting into the pedantic things. So I think overall, I have to go with the one that has a clear advantage to me. And for me, a longer silhouette and a bit more blade length and this drop point at this point is a bit of an advantage. I'm going to call the Imperium the winner. That's kind of a surprise to me because I used to be all about the clip points. I love how they look. But I find that if you're going to get something that's a little bit thicker, I was talking about the Kershaw Leak a few weeks back, and it's a teeny little sandwich of a knife. You know, it's got a little nylon spacer between some really thin stainless steel. And I don't mind if you go a little bit thicker than that. These are not super thick knives, but they are both probably 50 to 100% thicker than the Kershaw Leak. And if you're going to increase the thickness, I like for you to get a payout from that, if you're carrying something thicker, of a bit more edge length. I don't mind if something has around a 3-inch blade. That's kind of the minimum of what I like to carry for sort of an all-purpose EDC. But if it's going to be that 3 inches of edge length, I like the whole carry footprint to be like pretty tiny. This is actually quite a good carry footprint for most people, but I guess I'm a bit extreme in that. So being that they're both a little bit thicker, I like the amount of blade that this brings to the party. We'll best test them real quick, but I'm going to call the Civivi Imperium the winner. You can reverse flick it, you can regular flick it, you can front flip it. It's real fidgety. The Appalachian Drifter takes a little bit of getting used to. It was a little harder to sort of get those little micro movements. I would say the front flipper is a little bit better though. These rolled back front flippers work quite well a lot of the time for me. But yeah, overall, I'm gonna give it to the Imperium. So let's check out how our sharpness is doing. I stropped each of these, I think, on Friday of the week that I carried them a little bit and haven't touched them since. So there's a couple of days of usage on both of these blades. So let's see how they do. All right, 222 on the Appalachian Drifter and 267 on the Imperium. I have to say, I am realizing in this series that this edge protocol that I came up with that did really well on the Andy rope testing with the Spyderco CBN, I think it moves a lot of edge material, and that was fine for the really stable Victorinox knives, but I actually do find I don't like it as much for these better hardened steels, that actually you get a little bit more like dead spots and a little bit more edge rolling with the CBN 400 stone from Spyderco. So I think actually for my EDC series and in general, I'm going to be phasing away from that and looking back into diamond a little bit more. But 222 is just a little bit better than what we had with the Artisan RPM 9 steel, and a little bit better than what we got from 14C28N. 267 is right on par. The 14C28 numbers and the Artisan numbers were right around the 250 mark. So I would say I really like Nitro V. It's on par with all the other steels of its class that I have tried. I want to try some different sharpening protocols just so that I can get it dialed in a little bit better. We'll head into a semifinal where I'll test some other knives, and I think at the end of this I'll do an awards ceremony and announce which knives I'm keeping and what sort of spot they have in my EDC rotation. But if you want to see the last episode where I carried two slip joints against one another, a slip joint version of this knife and the Kershaw Federalist, links on screen now. For the rest of you, I'll say peace out from the home slice. Happy sharpening.